So there's something that I've noticed. I have an aunt, well, had an aunt, she has since passed away, who had something called Munchausen syndrome. Now, Munchausen syndrome is a thing where you thrive on the attention you get by being sick. So you like to go around and tell the people all around you how sick you are. Oh, I'm sick on this, sick on that, and sick. And you're always looking for attention because you're sick. And this is a type of social disorder. I don't know if it's a mental disorder. It might be, but it's definitely a social disorder. And, it can get... There's different levels of it. There's people that just anytime you ask them how they're feeling, they're like, oh my God, let me tell you how crap my life is. And they just whine and complain at you. It's kind of like Munchausen syndrome, but they're not actually faking an illness. And that's the thing about Munchausen syndrome. It is specifically faking an illness. Now, in extreme cases, people will actually make themselves sick. They will poison themselves in order to take it to the next level. Now, there's another one that's much more insidious, and it's called Munchausen by proxy. Now, Munchausen by proxy is where you make somebody else sick. This is typically done with parents and children. All the statistics I've seen on this one is that it's usually mothers poisoning their children because the mother has, for whatever reason, this happens a lot with women who were housewives for a really long time and they became extremely isolated, and the only time they ever got attention from anybody is when their children were actually sick. If their children aren't sick, they're expected to be locked away in their house taking care of their kids and not actually talk to other people. There's a whole feminist theory on this particular thing that I found really fascinating when I read through it, where it was talking about a woman who was absolutely isolated within the home, and the only time she ever sees people is when her children are sick, will start to intentionally poison her children so that she can leave the house and get attention from medical staff. It was really extreme. But it's not the only time it happens. Anyway, but yeah, Munchausen syndrome and Munchausen by proxy. Now, there's an interesting thing in the world of social media that I have seen, and it is very similar to these, and it has to do with certain types of fake social justice people. Now, these fake social justice people, the fake victims and the fake outrage, it's incredibly destructive because it, more than just being obnoxious, it's made it so that it's harder to believe victims when they talk about actual bad things happening to them, because the social justice outrage is so prevalent that it is not believable anymore. And it falls into the same two patterns. You get the people who are not really being oppressed, but boy howdy are they going to lean into it because they like the attention, much like Munchausen syndrome. But the far more insidious ones are the Munchausen by proxy social justice warriors. The ones who are outraged on behalf of another person. And this leads to infantilizing a group, usually in an incredibly racist or sexist way, so that you can be seen as the hero. And it's fascinating to watch. I have a black friend who, he had a term for it that I can't remember, but it was basically when white people treat black people like they're stupid children, and they need white people to amplify black voices because otherwise the black people can't do it on their own. You know, you see this a lot with people going out and being like, you should purchase things from black businesses. And it's like, that's preachy and obnoxious. And what if the black business sucks? Also, we're assuming that the black business can't survive without white people, you know, descending from Mount Olympus to buy things at the black business. I think that this is incredibly stupid and the wrong way to go about it. If anything, tell me that, you know, that food place is run by a bunch of black folks and it's like real authentic Cajun food. And I will be there because those people can cook. Or tell me that that jazz parlor is run by a bunch of black dudes and I will be there because those people can play. You don't, if you're going to be an ally to whatever group of people it is, you got to realize it's not about you. It's not the Munchausen syndrome. Do not suffer the Munchausen syndrome of the white knight. You are not helping these people for status or clout. You're not helping these people because it makes you feel good. You're helping them because it makes them feel good. This means you have to help them, first of all, in a way that's respectful, you know, and also, if your help isn't wanted, butt out. Get your nose out of their business. Don't help them if they don't want to be helped. I've discovered this with a lot of Native American tribes. In the past, I've tried to help Native American folks out, and they have responded with such overt hostility that I don't try to help them anymore unless they ask for it. You know, if they're like, hey, we would like your help, I'm like, okay, I'm here to help. But if they don't want it, I'm not going to overstep. It's going to cause more problems than it helps. So, and the other thing you got to remember is you're not dealing with children. You're dealing with adults, equals, your peers. The reason why a black life is the reason why Black Lives Matter is because a black life is just as important as a white life. In fact, there is no difference between a black life and a white life. The reason I get mad when police officers gun down black people, it's not because white cops shot black people. I could care less about the color of the people involved. Because if those white people are willing to shoot those black people, they're willing to shoot me too. Let's not get it twisted. Those folks are willing to shoot me too. Making it a race issue is actually undermining the real problem. And that is, people are getting away with acts of overt cruelty by finding a loophole. And the only reason why they're using the race loophole is because these people want to go kill a person and they're using this as a loophole, an excuse to let them do it. If they find an excuse to hurt me, they're going to hurt me too. It's just, this is where it is. And so there's a lot of terrible things that get done, and I hear people say that this problem mostly affects people of color. That's a racist way of saying it mostly hurts black people. I'm sorry. This is a racist way of saying it mostly affects poor people. Because if there's this poverty thing that's going on and somebody says, this mostly hurts people of color and minorities, what they're saying is people of color and minorities are also broke and poor, that you know this is mostly affecting them. And so obviously there's a racial component involved. And maybe there is, but if you left that part of it out, the white people might also realize that poverty is a universal thing that can affect all of us. And as a matter of fact, I know a lot of people who are poverty stricken, who are very much this pasty skin tone. And hey, did you know that life sucks when you're poor? Like, sucks. You live in a bad neighborhood with a lot of crime and everybody's broke? Gosh, that sucks. And I know poor, broke, white people, a lot of them in my own family, who have terrible lives because they're broke, because they're poor, because their neighborhood and their family, and you know, they're surrounded by violence and drugs and poverty and violence, and they're all white. So when we start talking about these issues, put down the Munchausen syndrome. Stop making this into a race issue, because most of it isn't. Most of it is an excuse. It is an excuse to hurt people indiscriminately. It is an excuse to say, oh, well, it's that other group of folks over there. I don't actually have to worry about it. I'm just going to go, oh, isn't that terrible, and ignore the problem. But then again, a lot of those media sources are owned by a bunch of wealthy people who want to control us, and they do so by engaging with this thing that has come into our culture because of the internet. Social media has created a form of Munchausen syndrome, and Munchausen syndrome by proxy, that stretches from sea to shining sea. It captivates all of us. And because it happens in real time and there's not a lot of consequences to it, it's really easy to just let it happen. So we need to be aware of this problem, because a lot of us want to help. And it's the thing that upsets me the most about a lot of the social justice warriors, is their heart is in the right place. They really do want to help. They really do think that they're making the world a better place by standing up against the Nazi and standing up against capitalism and stuff like that. But typically, their rage is misdirected. And the way they fight is using the same type of totalitarian tactics they claim to be standing against. And it's like, you do as I say and not as I do is not an effective parenting tactic, and it is not an effective social justice tactic. The reason why we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday is because that man was amazing. He had Jesus Christ-like features, and of being humble and giving speeches that made everybody listen, and he convinced us that he would be a good neighbor. And as a result of that, he got it through people's heads that we needed to back him up and support him. The gay movement. You gotta realize, you gotta remember, gay marriage is very, very recent. It's been illegal forever. And the reason it got made legal was because of Will and Grace, a sitcom about lovely gay people who were just pleasant and would make nice neighbors and had a sense of humor. And that was the point of the show. It just showed you the normalcy of a gay person. And then they convinced rich white women, that every rich white woman needed a gay best friend. And when that happens, well, if you're a guy and you're a little homophobic, but the woman that you've attached your life to is like, well, that's my friend Carl, and Carl's gay, and if you want any part of this body, you're going to be nice to Carl. Well, for most men, you're going to suck it up and you're going to get to know Carl. Because one, you want to make sure Carl's actually gay and not just your wife's side piece. But also, you know, and so you do that and you get to know Carl, and you're like, you get to meet Carl, and then you meet, you know, Bob, his partner, and you're like, Carl and Bob are cool. Like, I like Carl and Bob. They're good guys. And then some dude shows up with some kind of anti-gay stuff, and you're like, hey, those are my friends over there. Shut up. And that's how progress gets made. That is how progress gets made. Because then Carl and Bob and I went to a comedy show. And we laughed at Christopher Titus with some hideously inappropriate jokes. And we laughed until we cried, and then we left the place and we went and talked about it and laughed together. And, after an experience like that, we're brothers to the end. Yes, they may want to do some inappropriate things to me that I'm totally not into, but the standard rules apply. I just look at them and I go, ha, that's great. No, I'm not sleeping with you. And that's where it should land. That's where it should end. At that point, it's like the standard rules of society apply. I said no. There's the line in the sand. If they can't respect it, we can't be friends. Not because they're gay, but because they're inappropriate and won't respect my boundaries. Now, fortunately, when this did happen to me in my life, it wasn't a problem. We talked about it. I told them I wasn't interested. They went, okay. And they respected my boundaries. And so, we're friends to this day. Their names aren't actually Bob and Carl. I'm changing the names to protect the identities of the people I care about. But that's kind of the point, is in our relationship, the Munchausen syndrome thing doesn't exist. I'm not friends with these guys because it gives me social justice points. I'm friends with these guys because I like them. Because they're cool dudes and we can hang out and I trust them. If they want to watch my kid and babysit, they're allowed. Because I trust them. And that is what this is about. This is about you tolerate a person so that you can get to know a person, so that you can start to trust a person. And you've got to take all this social justice brouhaha where I want to go out and fight the patriarchy and blah, 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 blah. No, you don't. What you want to do is you're angry and you want to punch somebody in the face, and this gives your psychopathic inclination a place to go. And so the very social movements that were supposed to lift us up out of destruction and lead us to a better tomorrow have been tainted by this evil malice within us. It's not easy. Taking responsibility for your actions, controlling yourself, realizing that some of the feelings you have are maybe a little bit misplaced. It's not easy. I have been going to therapy to come to terms with some of this stuff within myself, because it's not like you figure it out once and then you're good for life. Life isn't that clean. I have at one point in my life achieved enlightenment, and I have lost that enlightenment, and I miss it. I would like to get back to that place. But my whole life is different now than it was at that time. It's more complicated. There's more going on. It's always changing. So, all right, folks, that's enough preaching from me. Good God, 18 minutes. Talk to y'all later.